Hello and welcome to another episode of Brand Retro. Today we have client of Cyberdogs and founder of Perennial Pride, Tom Suvansri. We're going to talk about his journey of cultivating his own brand and kind of how he took his own uniqueness to create a brand that is all about him, his approach to managing wealth, and ultimately that celebrates Tom's authenticity. Tom's a great guy, an even better client, and now he has a brand he can take pride in. Tom, how's it going today?
Oh, it's doing great. Great to be with you today, Mike.
Yeah, so Tom's one of our clients, and why I wanted to bring Tom in and kind of talk about his journey and his process is because a couple things. First of all, he's in the midst of it. And second of all, he's one of the one of the rare clients that comes to us knowing that he wants to make a change and that he wants to calibrate and he wants to think about brand. And a lot of times, we're left with the task of trying to convince clients that they need to do it. And in this case, Tom kind of came packing that idea. So we just got to jump right in and do some stuff for him. So to get us started, Tom, tell us a little bit about kind of your mindset coming into this and kind of how you knew that was a proper first step.
Well, I kind of reflected because I've been in my business and my financial practice for a number of years and was getting closer to knowing I was going to be doing this for at least the foreseeable future, more of a full-time thing. And I sort of recognized through my own journey with it that how I started thinking about my brand was kind of more robotic, to say the least. Even thinking about what I named my company, I kind of, Googled a article, say, how do you name a company? And kind of went through some robotic exercise that had no pull or feeling towards me as a person. It was just kind of what Google was telling me to do. So, as I got closer to realizing, hey, I found my calling in my business that, I want to really make it my own and feel more emotionally tied to it and what it meant to me in my business. So I knew I need help to do that. Right. I had a kind of inkling of where I wanted to go, but, I knew I didn't have the expertise and knowledge on how to do it.
Yeah, it was interesting when we first started working on yours because you had already kind of done the, how do I do this myself 101 steps and you'd done some of those things, but at the same time, you also recognize that I don't know that I love it the way it is. I did it myself, but I know the importance of it. So when we started to peel back the layers of your brand and really who you are and what your unique offering is and the different things that kind of lived below the surface, so to speak, it started to become very obvious that these were the things that need to come to the top and this was the direction we were going. And I don't know if you remember it, but we were on a call that one day and you were telling me about your background and, kind of some of the things that you had done in college and whatnot. And these things were the recipe for where we were headed was just starting to present itself. Can you talk through a little bit about what that was like from your perspective? I can tell you from my perspective, we've been through those before, but yours just came so naturally. I'd put it up there at one of the most natural kind of evolutions that we've ever had.
Yeah, it's kind of a interesting thing. Even before we got connected, like doing some soul searching myself, and I guess it's one of those things. I've been on this earth for a number of decades, and I don't think I've been through that level of depth and sort of introspection about my life and who I am, and I was so anxious to make sure my business represented that. And as I got to talking to you and learning more about that and said, this business was meant to be me. It was about me. And I wanted it to connect that way. And it was really, one of those, pivotal moments, I think. And I think I'll look back at this years from now and say, wow, it's kind of so enlightening because it makes you not only sort of more excited in where this is going, but certainly much more emotionally tied to it. And I know it represents me and my brand versus I think in my prior lives and in corporate America and thinking about things, you're always told to put on a sort of facade or a mask or a presence that may or may not be congruent with who you are. And sort of this allowed me to sort of find that out. What is it? And be comfortable with it, and, and knowing that it makes you unique. That was really that stood out to me. I know you had to help me think through that, but sometimes being unique can be scary.
Yeah, and I think the authenticity behind kind of how you went through that process and what you came out with on the other side is a direct reflection of who you are. So it's like, it's not only a vehicle now for your business, but it's such an accurate representation of who you are and what you represent that it's hard not to love your brand because it's all about you. I mean, you're kind of ingrained in that thing. I mean, I don't know that we've counted the different, points of integration, but there's, at least 4 or 5 points of integration that are directly related to who Thomas is and what, what your past is. So knowing that, how do you take, or what's your approach to now we've given birth to this brand, right? How do I take this now and apply this to everything I do going forward? Because when you came to us, I mean, the train had left the station. I mean, this thing's already moving. So, just foreshadowing a little bit, we're in the process of pulling one brand out and pushing another one forward. How does that work for you? And what's your plan to kind of unveil that and educate people on this new brand?
Yeah, and that's the fascinating part, because I mean, even today, obviously, I have clients I've been working for a little while, and they know me for who I am, and hopefully I was showing up that way anyway, even if I was on a different logo and brand and marketing. But people are starting to obviously take notice of it, and it spurred a lot of great conversations around why I did any of this, right? And what this business means for me, and not so much what I provide in terms of financial advice. Yeah, that's all great, but really kind of what this all means for me, and in my business and my future, and what I hope to impart to people who I get the fortune to work with. So it's allowed me to sort of just have those conversations with people, of my clients, my friends, my partners, around the meaning of this business, so they can really get to know me more, right? And understand this business more, know me personally better. And I'm just anxious to, as we evolve, kind of what we're doing from a marketing perspective, is to make that very abundantly clear for anyone who's never met me or been across to me. And that's the thing that makes me even more sort of excited, because for people who know me, hopefully they know me as a person generally, and kind of what I stand for the most part. But now I feel like I have the platform and freedom to do it without any question, right? And get out there to people who I've never met, and hopefully, was meant to meet at some point, but this messaging helps me get there faster.
Yeah.
To those types of people.
So I want to put you on the spot a little bit because I know you've been asked this question before, but how do you explain it to people? So when you're asked like Perennial Pride, what's that? Or the lion logo, what's that about? I mean, for me, being a participant in the creation, to me, it comes pretty naturally because I can just kind of give you the elements of how we got there. But being so connected to it and being on the inside of it, how do you answer that question?
When I kind of break it down, and I even use it from a perennial, meaning sort of, never ending, sort of lasting for long periods of time, and sort of possibilities. And to me, that represents what I kind of do in my world. I'm trying to explore and reinvent and sort of explore opportunities, and perpetuate the things I'm doing for myself, my family, and for generations to come. So that perennial aspect is kind of buried in everything I do and what I talk about, that what we're doing now on this earth, financially and in life, will have impacts down the road. And we want it to, for at least the people that care about that. And where it couples into the pride part, obviously we connected into sort of a lion sort of theme, where it's connected in my life for in a whole host of different ways, and from childhood to college to life today. And having that pride and sort of what I'm doing in my life and what I'm doing for my family and others, taking pride in that and being responsible for it, taking ownership of that, was a key component of what I wanted to instill, not only for myself, but for my clients too. And that's a big part of what I'm helping to provide for my clients, right?
Yep.
That ownership and pride of what they're doing for themselves, and certainly the ownership of that.
Yep. So to break it down even a little further and just kind of paint the picture for listeners is that if you go out and check out perennialpride.com, you'll see Tom's logo is kind of a lion, from a 30,000 foot view, it's a lion. But if you look closer at it, you'll see the mane of the lion kind of has a perpetual motion to it, which implies like the infinity piece. Why we chose a lion was because all the things Thomas just said, but also because, we want to think about protection. We want to think about, kind of the coveting or protection of one's family. If you look at the cheekbones of the lion, you'll see two P's in there for perennial pride. Like there's a lot of little nuances that were built in there, but kind of connect back to the backstory of who Thomas is. So that was kind of step one was to create that so that there was a foundation and a launching off point, so to speak, for the brand. But now as we go forward and we're starting to kind of create the voice, the message, the collateral, there's all these different things. Now we're unpackaging and trying to basically create the narrative and create the storytelling aspect of what Perennial Pride is all about, which only then strengthens the visual. But the idea then is that we give Thomas various tools in his toolbox and narratives that he can share and not only share and use as sales, kind of networking tools, but that it all come to him very naturally because it's all part of him anyway. So Thomas, how do you apply that, or how have you been applying that to your process? Because that is kind of the tough part, because it's such an abstract creative process. And now I got to put it on paper and I gotta use it to be very tactical with.
Yeah, and I think that's just the stuff that I think is evolving, right? And I think it's just a part of it is how I'm naturally interacting with people today, whether it's through my networking groups or, business partners I have already established with, and trying to infuse that into my conversations with them and interactions with them. And that's where some of the tools have been helpful to kind of showcase kind of what is really Perennial Pride about, right? And that's evolving, but it's become easier because, the more you sort of get ingrained with it, it becomes such a more natural talking point now. And they sometimes they can go off on tangents that are like, they can sense the emotional aspect of it because this brand has much stronger meaning for me personally, and it makes it easier to talk about. So I think from a tactical perspective, I mean, a lot of it is, the branding of it has drawn a lot of attention, and people will ask me about it often. And I probably say it a little differently every time, probably, which is probably something to work on, but it can be very vast in a lot of ways to interpret it, which I think is great because it's symbolic of the infinite ways you can do things and possibility of life, and certainly your financial life, but trying to find ways to infuse it into conversation, because it's not just about the latest, greatest investment tool. That's kind of the latter part.
Right.
It's the kind of the product and the end of it, but why anyone does any of this is what I care primarily about. And then the other stuff comes for the ride.
Yep. Well, and the one thing I would add to that too is like the consistency of the narrative that'll come to you. You're probably not as far off as you think. It's just, you're kind of finding your natural flow of things, but that's part of the benefits of creating something that comes from you and it's unique to you is, even if it's not exactly the same each time, there's still an 80%, 90% consistency that's just inherent in how you answer those questions. So to give you a little bit of a break on that, what advice, whether they're working with CyberDogs, whether they're finding another company, what advice would you give a potential client or somebody who's wanting to go down this road and the importance of brand and how to get there? Because you did a great job in trusting the process. And I know that, you and I had some common connections beforehand. So you might have had a little bit of a leg up in kind of how I worked and different things that CyberDogs does. But if it's somebody who's not worked with us or has never been through, the blueprint process, like like you and I have with Tammy Bronin, what advice would you give to somebody to get the most out of this? As much as I can talk till I'm blue in the face of how important the branding process is, but I work with all kinds of different customers and some embrace it and some resist it, so
Yeah, and I guess what struck me most, and this is, in my practice and in being in the financial space, it's like so crowded, right? And my initial aim for kind of moving down this path is because of what I do and how I help my clients today. I think it's unique. And I wanted my brand and my messaging and anything about it to also represent that and be congruent with it. So to me, it was a massive push. And, for anyone who's maybe considering that, I think it's and I'm fairly conservative in nature in general, to really, really be open-minded about it. Because as I've gone through this process and kind of, I was certainly, a little concerned. I'd never gone through anything like this. And my background isn't marketing. And so some of this was very foreign, but as I kind of let myself sort of get absorbed and sort of open-minded about and letting it became more natural and, it became more of a sort of a pull me in because I kind of felt like this was who I am and I can take ownership of it. Right. As opposed to kind of letting, like a Google search dictate how I should brand.
right.
Right. So I think for most people, representing or looking for a unique, I think that's where the huge benefit comes, especially sitting in crowded environments or industries. Like everyone looks the same and, it's so hard to get business anyway. So why look the same? Right. It's gonna, never going to stand out. So,
Yeah. And just to add on that too is it's not necessarily a mistake. It's more of a comfort thing in that when whether it's your industry or somebody else's, we always look at kind of what everybody else is doing, and there's a comfortability in blending in. You want to create something that blends in, and I want to look like whatever industry I'm entering in, and that's kind of where we instinctually start with our process. And for those who go down that road, no offense, but you're just you're white noise. And what I always tell my clients is that if you create something authentic, if you create something that's unique to you and it doesn't have to fit in that box of whatever the industry is doing, because that monkey see, monkey do mindset just is it's perpetuating on itself. And that's why two turns into four and four turns into eight and eight turns into 16. That's why there's so many of them, because they all just looked at what each other had done.
mhm.
Where if you can take a step back, take the good parts that you think need, or, if there's parts that you think are necessary, take those parts and then apply them to your own uniqueness and then come up with something that stands out. And that's what I think, to give Tom a compliment, when he came into this process, whether he knew all that or not, he embraced that mindset. So we were able to create something for him that it's unique in his industry. It's, I would say he's in the less than 10% who stand out because he doesn't look like everybody else, which is ideal. You want to break the white noise and do something different.
Yeah. And so I really appreciate you and your team helping me, and challenge me through that. I think that I think was more of one of the certainly bigger benefits of all this, because just like good partners, you want to work well together, but you have to challenge it, right? To kind of improve and test it, because it's too easy to fall into your normal belief systems about how it should work and certainly comfort level of things. This certainly was sometimes an uncomfortable process, but then that was a good clue for me that I was going down the right path,
Yeah.
right? Because if it was super comfortable and easy and all that stuff, it probably wasn't going to be all that unique. It was going to be kind of cookie cutter and comfortable. So, that is something that, struggle with initially, just to kind of be uncomfortable
Yeah.
with, but I think the product turned out great. And I'm so anxious to kind of see how this sort of evolves over time and share with even more people.
Yeah. Well, Thomas, you've been fun to work with on this process, because as much as we've pushed back and forth at times, you've also embraced it, which not everybody does. So kudos to you for doing that. Tell us a little bit about, just to, in summary, tell us a little bit about what's your core offering, what you do, and where people can reach out and learn more about Perennial Pride.
Yeah, I mean, one of the core things, going back to fundamentally around, helping people, bring freedom to their lives. And then one of the ways to do that is through owning their financial lives. And, a lot of the tools we use are centered around, creating your own sort of family type bank to finance your life, your investments, and your family and your futures, and giving people more ownership and control over that. Unfortunately, our financial world likes to keep control of everything. We want to give that back to the individual and their families so they can, live the lives that they want and use their money how they want. So that's my passion around this, because that's what I sort of envision for my own family. And helping others do that is something that I get tremendous joy and sort of power from. People can reach out to me, certainly at my website, perennialpride.com, certainly on all the Facebook, and certainly reach out. I trying to post some more things weekly to share some thoughts around financial space and in general. And, and you can always reach me at Tom at perennialpride.com. You'll email me. I'm around.
Yeah, and one thing I would throw out there for the listeners too is keep an eye on perennialpride.com and the social, because we're evolving it. We're doing stuff every day to evolve it, and you can kind of follow along with, the evolution of, so to speak. So it's kind of fun, for the design and creative geeks out there. If you want to follow along, please do. So Tom, thanks again for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
If you'd like to learn more about CyberDogs, share your thoughts, or even ask a specific question about this episode and/or the brand Retro Mindset, contact me directly at mike@cyberdogsmarketing.com.